Everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest Future of the Service webinar by Public Sector Catering. Today, we're going to be focusing our attention on British Food Fortnight. We have several people lined up to talk to us about British food, local sourcing and procurement. We have principally Alexia Robinson, founder of Love British Food. We'll be talking to her about British Food Fortnight. After that, we'll be moving on to talk to Phil Shelley, who is chair of the NHS Food Review, talking about any updates to the review and also how they relate to helping hospital caterers to provide more local food on the menus. We'll also be catching up with Jayne Jones, chair of Assist FM. Jayne will be giving us an update on the many changes happening in Scotland and their impact on local authority caterers and in particular their decisions on local procurement. And finally, we have Linda Cregan, who is the Education Food Service Director with ISS, talking about ISS's work on sourcing local produce. We're just going to be waiting a moment or two for one or two of the more participants to join us, and then we'll be ready to start. Okay, I think we're going to be about ready to make a start now. Right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Fode, editor of Public Sector Catering magazine. Thank you for joining us for the latest in our Future of Your Service webinars. Recent years have seen growing interest in sourcing more local and seasonal food. Food companies have seen this, and supermarket brands are now swinging their advertising behind the homegrown theme. Coleman's Mint Sauce, for instance, has adopted the tagline, "The best of British," and Ginsters has promoted its provenance with the slogan, "From the home of great pasties." In many ways, though, these retailers are a little late to the party because caterers have been celebrating the bounty of Britain for the last 20 years through the annual British Food Fortnight event. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Alexia Robinson of Love British Food, who has been behind this important national food festival. She'll be telling us about how it's grown, how and why caterers can get involved, and what happens when you do. Good afternoon, Alexia. Are you there?
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, David.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. After Alexia, we'll hear from three other panelists who will be giving us their own particular take on procurement. We have Phil Shelley of NHS Improvement and NHS England, and the man behind the recent NHS Food Review. He'll be giving us an update on the strategy and talking about how this links in with putting local food on NHS menus. And good afternoon, Phil.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's brilliant to be involved in such a dynamic topic, and I'm sure people are looking forward to the session.
Thank you. And we have Jayne Jones, chair of Assist FM, the Association of Scottish Local Authority School and Care Meals Providers. Jayne can tell us about how Scottish Government decisions are shaping local food procurement there. Hello, Jayne.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, David. It's lovely to be here, and I'm really pleased to give an update on the developments in Scotland.
Thank you very much for joining us. And we're also joined by Linda Cregan, Food Service Director for Education for ISS, who will tell us about her company's approach to buying and serving British food. Hello, Linda.
Hi, David. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
After we've heard from all of them, in any time we have left, we'll ask them to band together to form an impromptu panel, and together we can answer any questions that you may have on this particular topic. Before all that, a quick reminder about how the webinar will work. Other than the panelists and me, everyone will be muted. If you want to get in touch during the webinar, You can put a question to the panelists using the Q&A function. Please include your name and company if you can. And there's no need to wait to start up taking questions. You can post one anytime for us. And simply, if you just want to comment and get involved, then use the chat function, remembering to choose the option to all panelists and attendees. We won't, unfortunately, be able to answer any questions you put into the chat. Right, so let's turn to Alexia now and just get a little bit of a feel for British Food Fortnight, where it came from, what it does, and maybe how caterers can get involved. So, Alexia, it might be useful to do a quick recap on just exactly why you started British Food Fortnight. And perhaps just even before you do, and we should say it starts on Saturday, September the 18th, and runs through until Sunday, October the 3rd. Is that right?
That's right. All gets going this weekend. And it's many years now since I set it up in response to what was one of Britain's biggest rural crises, the foot and mouth disease that brought British livestock farming to sort of crisis levels. And I'm a country girl myself, and I thought the best way to give farmers hope to continue to farm and invest in their business and indeed to restock their livestock herds was to show them that there was huge demand for British produce. Now, what was really interesting back there is that people thought the public sector was impenetrable. The public sector was not even on the table for discussion at that stage. And it was very interesting. I was taken to one side by a man called Bob Cotton, who was head of something called the British Hospitality Association at the time, which represented food service, mainly private sector. But he said to me, no one is talking to my members, Alexia. And if you have this, to be frank, it was quite a romantic idea setting up British Food Fortnight, setting it up at the traditional time of Harvest Festival and things like that. And it was a very community-driven event rather than a PR top-down driven event. It was about getting activity going on the ground. And he just said, focus it very much on my members, make sure you make food service central to this. But even at that stage, the public sector, the idea of getting hospitals and care homes and prisons involved, that was a goal way off on the horizon. But what is so satisfying is that, for the last 10 years, Love British Food has been actively engaged in this sector. I mean, really leading the way. And I have to say, a voice on its own in this sector, actually. There's been a dearth of interest from all the other major players in terms of engaging with the public sector. And I think this year's British Food Fortnight, which, as you say, starts this weekend, the joy of it is that it's a celebration and a consolidation of all that I think we have achieved with the sector. But most importantly, it's also a catalyst for longer term action. British Food Fortnight, it's great fun. A lot of really fun things happen around the country. I mean, in schools, for example, yes, there's British Food Fortnight menus, but you'll also see so much fun activity taking place for pupils. The same in care homes, a lot of engagement for the elderly residents, fun things. So it's fun, but it is also an opportunity for people to experiment with their sourcing, experiment with flexible menus, with seasonal menus, see the benefit, see the response from the people that they are feeding. And hopefully then they'll be inspired to run those menus, source more British year round. And most importantly in this sector is to inspire other catering managers across the sector to get involved. So British Food Fortnight is a fortnight, and it's an awareness event and it's a catalyst, but it has a very serious intent. And over the years, what's rewarding, and I know everybody on this panel has experienced this, it's a robust promotion. It's very proven to deliver those results. So we're having fun, but we've got a serious intent behind it.
Okay, and how have you seen interest in British Food Fortnight change over the years?
Well, I remember, some of the people on this panel, I think, might have attended, but I remember we had, some years ago, we held the first food service summit, as we rather grandly called it, in a London restaurant, where we challenged the restaurant to serve a lovely 3-course lunch for the cost of a per patient budget allowance that most NHS catering managers have to work towards, and the Secretary of State attended, and we gathered. It was the first time that we had gathered people across the sector, and actually we involved the private sector as well in that, because of course so many of the private sector organisations actually are seeking or indeed have public sector contracts, and that was the first move, and then I mean I have to really pay homage to the sector as a whole for how you have embraced and enabled Love British Food to do what we've done, because I think the setting up of the PSC 100 group has been genius on the part of Public Sector Catering magazine, and the very wonderful Andy Jones, who has just been such a leader for us all. And I think what I've certainly done, I've sat on a lot of industry boards in my time, as it were, but this is like a family. I've never sat on a group where the people on it are so united by a common passion and a genuine sense of wanting to help each other. So what I think is great about this sector is all the foundations are there for us to achieve what we want to achieve. And indeed, over the last 2 years, which I mean has just been so extraordinarily difficult for so many of the people who the organisations you represent have members and employees for, we have nevertheless got some really gritty work done. I mean, I remember it's less than 2 years ago that Phil, Shelley, you, David, and I, and Andy were up at Nottingham University City Hospital, taking the then head of NHS improvement round to say, come on, look at what this hospital can achieve. Look, they're sourcing all their produce from the local market. All their meat comes from the Midlands, and yet you haven't even got food on the NHS improvement agenda. And I'm just using this as an example of the gritty work we're doing. But from that, we did Andy, Phil, and I did a small consultancy piece of work, really, to look at what could be done, what could change, what were the things that we could say to the Department of Health. Look, these are some really achievable things that you could do that would make it easier on the ground for catering managers to source British. This was sitting at a level sort of below the hospital food review that Phil was doing with Prue Leaf, and has just been exemplary. And we put together a set of, I think it was 7 recommendations that went to the Department of Health. And very interestingly, number 1 recommendation, hey, guess what it was? It was, you need to have a food lead on the NHS improvement programme. Well, look where we're at now. Phil Shelley no longer with Taunton Musgrave Hospital, where he was doing a fantastic job there, but actually now leading this whole area on the NHS improvement programme. So that's just one example. But I think what's been so satisfying is this has not been a talking shop. This has been about delivery. And that is whether it's working with the prisons, with the university caterers organisations, with care homes. It's all about delivery. This year, we conducted, as you know, David, because we did it in association with you, and you very kindly gave us the platform. We conducted detailed research looking at every single aspect of the public sector. What is happening in those sectors at the moment? What is happening in universities? What are the sourcing challenges on the ground? What are the opportunities? What are the best practice examples? Now, all of that research is published on the Love British Food website. It's been, you've very kindly been running it every month in the Public Sector Catering magazine. But anyone who wants to understand this sector, particularly the farming industry, there seems to be such a fear of the sector. It's like, as I said at the beginning, like it's impenetrable. Well, if you want to understand it, please take some time and read that research, because I think what is so exciting when you read that research is very honestly written about the opportunities and the challenges. But what you will see is that there are real opportunities, and that there is really good activity taking place on the ground in all sectors. I mean, there's not one area that isn't doing something fairly phenomenal. And I think the challenge now is that we need to just make sure that we roll it out across all sites. So instead of us talking about, like we do with hospitals, exemplary trusts, all trusts are exemplary. That's what we need to aim for. Instead of me talking to Hampshire County Council, where they get 400 schools involved with this, and I have to say the school sector under Food for Life is pretty impressive on this, but let's make that universal across. I know this is going to happen with the government's buying standards that are going to be published. And I'm sorry, I'm touching on so much things, but there's so much activity to refer to. I mean, I was very encouraged being on a Crown Commercial stakeholder forum early this week, and what were the words being used by the Crown? It was just non-stop: sustainability, seasonality, local. I mean, it was just this was never talked about some years back, and so it's happening, but. And there are leaders. I mean, when you look at the industry leaders, whether that's in care homes, whether it's hospitals, whether it's in TUCO, the University Caterers Organisation, whether it's the work that Al Kriski's doing in prisons. Recently, I've been talking to military sites. Across the board, there are people who are real leaders. And I think it's fantastic that this afternoon, we're all going to have the opportunity to listen to what Jayne Jones has got to say in Scotland, because Jayne, you may be quite a long way away, and none of us have been able to come and visit you, obviously, during COVID, but what is happening in Scotland is just, well, I mean, you have to look at that and you think, well, how on earth did England get so far behind? So long-winded way of saying British Food Fortnight this year is a celebration of what we have all achieved together as a team. And I hope that it inspires people across the sector to review the way they source produce and the values they put on it going forward for the next 12 months.
Okay, that's wonderful. I wonder if I could just sort of get you to talk just a little bit about some of the challenges which the public sector potentially faces, cost obviously being one of them. What are some of the approaches you found from the sort of the exemplary hospital trusts and schools around that have helped them to be able to overcome potential obstacles such as cost?
Well, I think if you look on, I mentioned that we'd put the research onto the British Food website. We actually created an area called the Public Procurement Hub, where there are some very good case studies on that. And actually, universally, across those case studies, what people have proven, whether they've switched their meat to local sourcing, as Nottingham University Hospital has, or whether they've switched to sourcing all their milk from a local dairy, is that actually, I don't think there's a single one that has come back to us and said it's more expensive, which is interesting. But I think the whole debate has moved beyond one of price to one of values. And I think that's been the game changer word. It's no longer about just cost in terms of monetary cost. It's in terms of values and value for money. And what's exciting is that the values that people are putting on food sourcing now have just changed immeasurably. People care about the environmental footprint, they care about the nutritional value, they care about how healthy it is, they care about local, so in terms of the measurement that people are putting on the food they're sourcing, I think that has completely changed. I still think there is there's a big challenge for example, a community hospital in Hawkhurst in Kent has been in touch with me in the last few days, and the head chef there has developed her own vegetable garden. I mean, she sent me wonderful photographs of all the vegetables and fruit she's growing for her patients in the community hospital. She wants to go further. Now, she has two huge challenges. One, getting buy-in from her directors, for whom they might not share the same passion that she has, and two, literally just like not a bit rabbit in the headlights, not quite knowing, well, what do I do if I want to source local meat? Currently, her chicken, I think, is coming from Poland. And that first issue that she highlighted about the directors, I think this is something that we've all on the PSC 100 talked about, is that there is a mismatch between the catering manager who, caterers are actually creative people. If you're a chef, you're creative, okay? And you watch foodie programs and you read foodie stuff and you want to do this, but you've probably been constrained by, the contracts and tenders you're operating under. That's where the passion is to change. Unfortunately, at a director level, there is a dearth of nutritionists and a dearth of people who do really grasp this. And this is going to be an interesting challenge for us all to work towards, but it now seems beholden on the catering manager to inspire their directors. And that is quite a tough ask, I think. And then this other thing of just literally being a bit rabbit in the headlights, like, well, how do I go about sourcing my chicken from, how do I go to sourcing British chicken? which is quite difficult actually, because there isn't enough British chicken at the moment. So that, you know, and it's what I hope is that people can flick onto that public procurement hub. They can look at what, how, for example, the prison sector is doing, how the university caterers organisation is taking a lead, with the work that Jayne is doing, which is genius across Scotland. But look at perhaps case study examples of particular catering managers in a hospital or a school, and look at how they have actually gone about sourcing it. I mean, I think Chris Neal up in Nottingham, the arrangement he has with a local butcher, and all the local farmers' meat goes to that local butcher, and that local butcher is the main supplier for his hospital. And when it's explained to you like that, you think, God, well, that's achievable. Because the challenge is not just for the catering manager, the challenge is also for the farmers and the producers. Now, there are a lot of farmers and producers who have felt this sector is impenetrable, but you know, with the amount of change that's going on in farming now, they are looking for new customers. And of course, the work that we've all been doing has had quite a lot of publicity, so it's opened up those opportunities. But on that side, they equally are saying, okay, so we want to source our local university, we want to supply our local university, supply our local hospital, but how on earth do we go about doing that? And I think there's not going to be one fit for all solution to that. I think there's going to be, and Phil and I have been working on teaming farmers with NHS catering managers, and then we want to sort of track the progress they make. And now for some of them, they might actually achieve a new supply chain within the next 6 months. For others, it might take 3 years. But hey, do you know, if you're setting up a new supply chain between a farmer and a public sector organisation, well, if that takes 3 years, it doesn't matter. If you get that supply chain in place, well, that's going to give the farmer confidence that he can hand on his farm to the next generation in a healthy state, for example. So opportunities, challenges, you know, we need leadership. I think when Phil and I talk, we always end up saying, you know, the missing bit of this jigsaw puzzle is the word inspire, which sounds very ethereal, but we need to inspire, and if I can add the word enable, people across the sector. And that you know, the challenges that the people who are leaders, you know, the Chris Neals of this world, the Al Kriskis, the Andy Joneses, that, you know, they're working such long hours. There's, you know, where's the capacity to find that extra time to play a leader and things? So I think when we look at implementing the results of the hospital food review, looking at taking forward Dimbleby's food strategy, resources got to be built in to, I don't know if it's going around the country and running workshops or whatever it is, but yeah, as a first step, go onto that public procurement hub, read all the case studies on it. They'll inspire you and they'll make you feel that if you're a catering manager and you want to do this, but you think it's perhaps too challenging, they'll give you a sense of confidence that maybe it's possible.
Okay, Alexia, thank you very much for that. Perhaps you could, in the chat function, just give people the address for that hub so that they can pick up on that. But thank you very much for that. Time for me now to bring in Phil Shelley. Phil, yeah, as the lead on the NHS Hospital Food Review, can you tell us about the part that local procurement can play in shaping what goes on hospital menus? And if you can, perhaps highlight one or two examples where it's already being done very well.
Well, first of all, if nobody was excited about the next fortnight, then you obviously weren't listening. I mean, wasn't that terrific just to hear what has been going on, how long it's taken to get where we are? But there's no doubt we're in a really different position. And just picking up on something that's been floating around the chat and what Alexia mentioned, and that's around value. And for me, it's more around principle. And you've got cost, you've got quality, you've got value, and you've got the environment. And I think all of those help us in our decision making. And everybody in the end, you know, just like we do as individuals when we go shopping, we purchase on principle. And, you know, we all hope that people look a little bit wider around it. We know the government buying standards, we hope will start to reflect a little bit more reality around that principle. And I think, you know, okay, we've had incredibly challenging times, David, But the power of partnership, which we often talk about, you know, Alexia is showing this now, that our actions, you know, must follow the words. We've been talking about this for a long, long time, and now we're starting to see things happen. So great credit to Alexia, the wider team, all those linked into the PSC 100. You know, what are the challenges? How do we move forward? And I think we're picking that up right now. Can I just share with you a couple of things that we've been doing through the review, and then I'll just pick up you know, how we link into the fortnight. I mean, we've started this 3-year program around great food, good health. It clearly identifies the potential, the ambition, and the willingness for all of us to make a significant difference. And, you know, a bit like what this weekend will do, fortnight will do, it will really push the boundaries back. In the beginning of the review, I talked about the 8 recommendations. Just a couple of words about 3 of them right now. So you can see, I think there is a real sea change in healthcare catering. We've got these exemplary trusts. They're in full flow. They're in deep conversations, trialing and piloting opportunities, and they're testing the water on innovative solutions. We've got a fantastic expert group. They've been formed. They're now chairing a range of subgroups that, you know, collaborative working is actually now continuing. And when you look across that sphere now, you know, we've got clinicians, dietitians, caterers, food suppliers, FM providers. We've got the associations, Net Carbon Zero and Culture and Lifestyle as a focus. And we've got critical colleagues who people have often been telling us, well, this needs to change. You need to do this. Well, rather than shut them out, we've included them in the conversations to say, you know, if you've got a view, then come and tell us about it and stay within. So these groups' outcomes, they're linked to the recommendations. And the 3 I want to pick up on quickly is, first of all, catering staff support. The NHS Chef 2021 competition has completed the regional heats. I mean, amazing results and experiences. We've spoken to a number of people for advice, you know, around things like the Care Chef of the Year, School Chef of the Year. So thank you to those that have helped us with that. The final details are completed for the mentoring event, which is at the end of September, with plans being checked for the national elimination finals at the end of October. You know, we're all proud of our teams, aren't we? Whether we're in the care, schools, university sector, and in the hospitals likewise. You know, this competition proves that within our services, we have got great skills. We need a continuation of support and information if our chefs are going to flourish and shape the future of our menus. Alexia talked about a number of trusts and chefs that are doing that, and we need that to be wider. The Good Food Programme has also been launched. That's being coordinated by the HIT Academy. And it's so pleasing to see and view the number of applicants and trusts that are using the levy within the NHS for catering, learning and development. So really encouraging to see that. And I think that will grow year on year now when people start realizing how to use it. Nutrition, hydration. I think, you know, as our expert group are getting out and about, site visits are an important experience. You know, we're working together to raise the profile of food and drink services. What's become clear, it's surprising how many trusts have little representation for food and drink at board level. You know, and when you think of how important food safety is, as well as the quality of our food and drink, you know, we have to challenge this. And that's what we're doing. And those that have got board representation now, they're already further ahead, and we need to help those trusts to pick up the pace. And through the challenges of COVID, never before have the facilities for our staff and colleagues been so important. You know, we all need time to step away from the workplace. Drink breaks and meal times are essential if you want to motivate your workforce. So our facilities need to enhance our well-being if we want our workforce to come with us on the journey. So just in summarising that, and then we'll talk about, you know, how we're linking into British food. You know, successful teams require appropriate leadership, and Alexia shared about that. That, you know, we're so proud of our leadership within the public sector that are overarching, but you know, we look at leaders in all of these industries that we work with. You know, all of our public services. We want great food. We want it to taste of quality, and we want it to be an attractive environment. So that often costs money if we want our environment to be right. We want to be, and we need to be, accountable for our services. So the balance of cost of food, control of labour, the core principles of food safety, and we need to understand the pressure on things like food waste and our retail income, which has been really challenging as we try and step back into our retail scenario. The growing passion for public sector catering to lead on the promotion of British Food Fortnight, really, to you and I, it comes as no surprise, does it? You know, and you're right. I mean, our hospitals are anchor institutions. I think we're beautifully positioned to link with farmers and local producers. Our menus need to reflect our regions as well as the seasonality of our products. You know, I mean, what has developed in recent months is a willingness for hospitals to engage with locality, hopefully understand the benefits, the relationships, and of course, encourage the structure of the supply chain to include British. You know, it's difficult to talk about trust, and we pick out one or two, but there's a lot. I'm very proud, and rightly so, Tim Ratcliffe was recognised last week at the Hospital Catering Awards. You know, what they've done in East Lancashire is absolutely fantastic. You know, there's a big push, rightly so, around plant forward, but what we're also doing is focusing on the industry within Britain and looking at the way we've used game in the NHS. You know, it's full of protein, it's really low on fat. Let's bring that into our menus. I'm really proud of what Brod has been doing in West Suffolk. You know, some amazing food is being produced from that kitchen there for patients and staff. So, you know, we've got the chief exec regularly going into that area and eating with his colleagues, and they're really proud of that food. And around the country, there's some great experiences. To finish off, really, I think our pride in the NHS over recent months, I think, is parallel with our pride in British food. You know, and if you're not maximising the opportunity to develop your menus in line with availability, then please do what Alexia said, get on that website. But if you need support, you know, we're here. As industry leads, we're here to support. We want people to move forward. And sometimes you need that help in hand. We're here to do that. Please engage with us and we'll move forward together. I hope that gives a bit of an insight, David.
Yeah, it certainly does. Thank you very much for that, Phil. And now I'd like to ask Jayne Jones to tell us a little bit about the approach to local procurement that the Scottish Government has been encouraging the members of Assist FM to embrace. All right, Jayne?
Hi there. Thanks for that, David. I have some slides that I'm going to share if that's okay. However, my internet connectivity is not great, so I hope everyone gets enough of a gist of what I'm saying as I go through, so please bear with me. But thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak about this. We're really lucky because in Scotland we have a whole month to celebrate. We have Scottish Food Fortnight is just drawing to a close this weekend. And then, of course, we are able to go straight into the next fortnight and celebrate British Food Fortnight with you guys. So we're in a really lucky position. And I guess that kind of doubles down in our commitment and what we love about our local food approach in Scotland. But really where we're at is public sector caterers across Scotland have worked hard, certainly over the past 10, 15 years, to develop a real partnership approach to local food procurement. And I think there's a clear and realistic understanding of the benefits and issues around doing so. We have a pretty firm grip of the reasons why taking a whole systems approach to food is not only the right thing to do, but it's also one of the best ways of addressing a whole range of food-related issues, and actually turns those issues into some practical and deliverable food solutions. So we procure our food for schools across Scotland in two main ways, both of which really help us to increase the availability of local food. First, we work incredibly closely with each other and work collaboratively with Scotland Excel. My colleague Laura Muir from Scotland Excel is on the session today, I think, and could speak much more clearly about this than I can. But ultimately, Scotland Excel is a procurement organisation across Scottish councils, and that enables us to have the scale and the buying power to deliver on our strategic priorities, one of those main priorities being buying local and sustainable food. Secondly, though, we also carry out local procurement exercises, which enable us at the other end to be more reactive and to buy directly from SMEs and micro businesses who perhaps don't have the scope, scale, or ability or confidence to tender for national or larger contracts. So by designing local procurement exercises, we are able to work much more collaboratively with local suppliers. And I should say we take this approach nationally too. So we can offer very small lots, either for small geographical areas like an island, or for a specific product or two, to enable them to engage with us and get their products onto the plates of our children and young people. So take, for example, the Isle of Bute. We started off running a pilot there, engaging with local suppliers on the island. That was to provide things like local butcher meat, eggs, cheese, milk, and other commodities. 12 years on, and we are continuing to work with those same people, supporting local jobs and community wealth building, while providing good quality local food for our children and young people and to the elderly in our care home there. Another example for us locally in Argyll and Bute was cheese. So we were able to procure local cheese from Campbelltown at one point, but distribution of it was a real challenge. So we could get the cheese, but we couldn't get it to schools. But by working with our local food and veg suppliers, he was able to collect it. And when he was doing his deliveries, he was able to backhaul it and then deliver it along with his fruit and veg to our schools. So it takes some time and it takes some creativity, but it is well worth doing. When we carry out our tender exercises, be those local or national, we consider carefully what that balance should be for price versus quality. And there's been quite a bit in the chat about that already today. We try to clearly define where we can what we mean by quality, both in terms of product specification. So for instance, we require Scotch beef from our butcher meat contracts, but also the other benefits of procuring locally, such as the community benefits and the sustainability benefits. So getting food onto children's plates should never be about a race to the bottom on price. It should be clearly showing the wider societal benefits, as well as being the best quality produce that we can afford. So it's a lot of things that we have to balance there. But we want our children and young people to understand not only that the food we procure is locally sourced, but to see for themselves what farm to fork really means. That's ultimately what's at the end of it, and that is what will change our systems in the future. So we care very much about that quality, and we have the structures in place that are continuing to improve and to help us to deliver on those wide systems aims. So these are just some of those main ways that we do this. We have Catering for Change, which is a Scottish Government procurement guidance about how to buy food sustainably in the public sector. It's a bit of a Bible for us, and it outlines how best to ensure opportunities for local and sustainable food can be delivered through the public sector food chain. Now that guidance is now 10 years old, and now that we're in a post-Brexit, post-ish pandemic world, and we are much more aware of climate change implications than we were 10 years ago, that document is being reviewed and updated so that it continues to underpin our purchasing practices in the future. We also have Better Eating, Better Learning guidance for our schools. That's been in effect since 2014. It outlines why we should take that whole school, whole systems approach to school food, engaging with our children and young people and using food throughout the school, not just at lunchtime, to create those changes that we need to develop food and farming systems that work for us. So they focus on providing local sustainable food that engages our children and young people as the customer and puts them at the heart of the planning, really. We have the recently updated Healthy Eating in Schools guidance, which again ensures that we think holistically about food provision across the school day. And of course, something we're very invested in Scotland is that we have the Soil Association actively delivering the Food for Life Served Here programme. I had noted down that half of the Scottish local authorities have that accreditation. However, that has now increased to 17 of the 32 local authorities, because Glasgow City Council, the largest local authority in Scotland, had their certification granted to them yesterday. So many congratulations to caterers in Glasgow for that achievement. But that just shows you the level of support for local and sustainable food across Scotland. And the programme in Scotland is funded by Scottish Government to deliver on the aims of increasing the availability of local, sustainable and higher welfare freshly cooked food. So that's where we're at around those kind of things as well. But although I've mentioned the long-term programmes, there is always more we can do. So we haven't just put a tick in a box and said, that's it, we walk away from here. And certainly the pandemic has clearly shown, like never before, the importance of our local food and drink providers and how they are such a lifeline when we work in partnership with them. I won't go into this in too much detail, but I mentioned our fruit and veg supplier earlier. We in Argyll and Bute could not have supported our vulnerable families during the pandemic if it hadn't been for our local fruit and veg and bakeries and all of the local providers that we work with. They went over and above to make sure we got local fresh produce to those who needed it most. And that was more than just basic commodities. We were able to send Scottish strawberries to vulnerable people, which meant that they actually felt cared for during the midst of the pandemic. And as a result of that, here's some, you won't be able to see this in any detail, but it gives you a feeling of some of the positive feedback that we got from our people that showed how local food made them feel valued. Post-pandemic, the Scottish Government has done quite a bit of work in this area to develop what we're doing even further. So the Scottish Government established a Social Renewal Advisory Board, which had a food circle. And we focused on how that we could learn lessons from the pandemic, with a key one being local food partnerships, taking a systems approach and harnessing the power of public sector procurement for community wealth building and helping to create that green recovery, as well as, most importantly, using food as a means of tackling the consequences of poverty. And what we're seeing now are those recommendations becoming policy commitments. So we have a local food strategy consultation underway in Scotland right now, and it runs until November. And it identifies 3 pillars for working to develop really deliverable local food strategies. And one of those 3 pillars is the power, importance and value of public sector food procurement. We have the Scottish Organic Stakeholders Group, which I'm privileged to be part of. And that group is calling for a commitment to local, organic and ethical foods to be made by public sector caterers as a key strategy for tackling climate change, economic stability and wealth building. So agroecological farming is not something that's done over there by someone else. It becomes critical to what we do. Now, at the moment, we don't have those commitments, but we should absolutely be moving towards that. And the other thing that we had very recently announced last week was the Good Food Nation Bill. That was part of the programme for government, which is designed to take a whole systems approach to food. So finally, before I wrap up, what we have in school food in Scotland is a very much an expanding service. So we're rolling out universal free school meals to all primary pupils and are providing meals to all early years pupils who are in receipt of 1140 hours of childcare. Along with that, there's a commitment to roll out universal free breakfasts and universal free holiday provision for primary pupils too. So we're in a unique moment in time here, and we have a unique opportunity to ensure that those meals are thought about differently, that they aren't just any old meals with that race to the bottom in cost, but they are considered as an investment in our children and young people, not as a cost, and that they are locally, ethically and sustainably procured so that they can be a driver for change. And I won't go through all of these wider benefits that are on this slide, because everyone I'm sure in this call knows and understands those. But the other thing, of course, food does is it brings people together, and it's a way that we show we care, never more so than when we are locally invested in it. So I'll stop there, because you guys know I could talk forever, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the discussions.
That's terrific, Jayne. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting indeed. And now I'd like to bring in Linda Cregan from ISS to tell us not just about how they put local food on the menus, but also how they incorporate it into educating children about food too. Is that right, Linda?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, David. I've just started sharing some slides. I don't know if you guys can all see that because I'm not the best with technology. That's brilliant. Thanks. So thanks, David, and hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, I am the Food Service Director for ISS Education. In ISS, we work right across the public sector. I work specifically in the education team, but we also offer food right across healthcare and in the B&I workplace sectors as well. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples today of what we do in our schools, really, and why we chose to get involved in British Food Fortnight. So hopefully I can move my slide on. Just bear with me a second, guys. Okay, so as a business, a lot of you will know, I think going back to what Philip and Jayne were saying earlier and Alexia was saying earlier about the importance of their leadership. In ISS, we have always had a leader in place that has really firmly believed in the importance of good, fresh, local, seasonal produce. And so very, very early on, ISS adopted the Food for Life Served Here standards. We look to source locally and seasonally wherever possible. And this is one of the reasons really why I think we were keen to become a formal partner of Love British Food, because for us, it's not just about recognising the importance of the produce we serve, but also about the great work that our suppliers do and making sure that our young customers as well know just how their school lunches make it onto their plate. We work very, very closely with our supply partners, and we work closely with them because they're bought into our philosophy on the importance of being able to balance climate, health and nature, and that's how we describe it to them. They're equally committed as we are to helping us to provide that food for life standard and help us maintain that status that we've achieved so far across all of our schools. So we work closely with both Bid Food and NCB Food Service. And they work really on our behalf with local producers, with growers, with farmers, and help us to purchase the amount of food and help us source the amount of food, seasonal and British produce that we need from farms right around the country. And that is what really helps us capture that local procurement, but help us reduce our food miles along the way. We've also aligned all of our food procurement policies right across our business so that helps us purchase those certified ingredients, because it's actually part of a much wider formal procurement policy across ISS. So as you can see on the screen here, things like just having policies in place that make sure all our eggs are free range, our meat is sourced from UK farms with very high welfare standards, and we're also company partners with people like the Marine Conservation Society. So our relationship with British Food, I think, is what gives us that great platform for communicating how we do that. And communication for us isn't just as important to parents and carers as it is to the children. Because it's in schools, it's really the parents that have to have that confidence and trust in the food that we're serving to their children every single day in the dining rooms. And so for our parents, we choose to communicate this through a variety of ways and have tools like you can see on the screen here, such as our parent information leaflets. We have lots of information on our websites. We hold webinars and do external things with our parents through our Feeding Hungry Minds website. But we do the same as everybody else does. We just invite them into the dining room so that they can come and actually see for themselves what their children are eating. And then for the pupils, we have a really a regular marketing and events calendar, and that includes lots of different promotions and concept launches as well. I think they're very much designed with our customers in mind. So right across our age groups, they're age appropriate marketing and promotions and concept launches. And you can see on the screen just a couple of things that we do. And I'll talk to you in a little bit more detail about some of them in a second. I think one of the things I did just want to note, though, that there's lots of talk at the moment about communications and marketing, particularly to teenagers. And one of the things that we are very, very concerned about in ISS and very aware of is that teenagers these days are quite often bombarded with aggressive marketing tactics that lead them into quite unhealthy foods. And we don't want to be one of the caterers that's helping to facilitate that. So we have a very public commitment to making sure that we are responsible with all of our marketing, all of our promotions, and all of the messages that we use around our concept launches. So keeping them interesting and very, very live with the high street, but actually supporting our pupils and our young customers to make better choices. And you can see on the screen here our Feed Your Eco, which was one of our new concept launches, brand new plant-based concept, but it shows you a really good example of how we do this. So let me move on to a couple of more specific examples. One of the activities that we run actually right across our business, not just in schools, but also in healthcare and business and industry, is our Produce of the Month. This is not just a celebration of the great British and seasonal produce that we use, but it's also a celebration of the growers and the farmers themselves. And you can see on the screen here some of the posters that we have in our dining rooms. And we support that with snack stations so that the pupils and students are actually encouraged to try some of these produce, but also with food displays as well, so that they can see actually where their food is coming from. I think Foodie Futures is our annual sustainable food choices themed day, and this is really designed to prompt conversations about how we can support a healthier and more sustainable environment. So what this consists of is special menus that focus on that local and seasonal produce, and we use hero ingredients to enable us to do that. But we also have a big focus on wasting less as well. So we use leftovers such as broccoli stalks, for example, and make them into delicious snacks like you can see on the menu here with our broccoli crisps. And then we have feedback boards in all of our dining rooms, which are really a way of inviting students and pupils themselves to come and talk to us about what environmental issues matter most to them. One of my personal favourites is Green Fingers, and some of you may have heard about this. Green Fingers has developed over the last few years, and we now have a more formal partnership with Innocent Smoothies and with Chris Collins, who's the ex-Blue Peter gardener. This year, because everything going on with COVID, we just didn't let that get in our way, and we parachuted Chris and our exec chefs and the nutritionists directly into classrooms this year via whiteboards, and we carried on holding our virtual cooking sessions and our growing sessions and healthy eating sessions, and that just went down an absolute storm really, because it meant that nobody missed out under the COVID conditions. And I guess all that leads us nicely into our celebration of British Food Fortnight, which is something that we celebrate right across business. What you can see on the screen is what we are doing in our dining room, so much of the promotion and the awareness activities that takes place. But we also do things outside of the dining room as well. So you can also see examples here of some of the growing experiments that we put on our website that children and young people can try at home. And we're also going to be resharing our at home series of videos that we filmed towards the end of COVID. And this saw our chefs from both our education and our B&I business actually inviting people live into their homes, where they were cooking up some recipes with ideas around how people could use this seasonal produce that was available to them. And one of the great things here is, as you can see, we had some very special chefs joining us directly from our homes there. I think all of this activity, it forms part of our health and wellbeing programme, which is Rich for the Future. This is built upon 3 pillars, like you can see on the screen here, for you, for life, and for the planet. And under each of those commitments, under each of those pillars, we have some really, really strong commitments about how we will do business and how we will partner with local farmers, with local growers, etc. And our partnership with Love British Food is really instrumental in helping us deliver that. So from the fresh, local, seasonal produce that we put in on the plates in the For You pillar, right through to teaching children about where their food comes from, how to grow that food as part of the For Life pillar. And then, of course, our Food for Life accreditations and the sustainable and local procurement commitments that we have. And then taking every opportunity to teach people and offer activities that encourage them to have that sustainable diet under the For the Planet pillar. I hope like Jayne said, we are very, very passionate here at ISS as well. But I guess I better stop there, David, and hand back over to you and take any questions afterwards.
All right, Linda, thank you very much. That's terrific, and some great ideas there. We don't have a lot of time left, but I'd like to invite Jayne, Phil, and Alexia to reconnect so that we can see them all, and just sort of take a look at perhaps one or two of the issues that have come up in the questions. One that has recurred is the one of cost, and I know you've addressed the aspect of value there, social value perhaps, but I wonder, is sustainability and the fact that the government might well be relying on the public sector to play its part in helping it to meet its own carbon reduction commitments, might that be something that can be used to perhaps increase funding, or at least get some more support perhaps than we're currently getting from the government in terms of being able to buy local produce? Would anyone like to pick up on that idea? Okay, I think Jayne, your hand was up first.
I'll just very quickly say what I think about that is the short answer is yes, absolutely. What we actually need to be doing is changing people's mindsets around how we think about public sector food. We need to move away from it being identified as a cost and being clearer about it being an investment, not only in the people we feed, which is our children, our young people, our sick, our elderly, our prison population, but we're then also able to deliver all of those systemic changes, including sustainability and climate change actions. So it absolutely should be front and centre of people's planning when they're thinking about climate change actions too.
Thank you. Alexia, I think you wanted to say something too?
Well, I mean, as always, Jayne's just articulated it perfectly, and I just couldn't put it better myself. But I mean, absolutely, we need to take a lead from Scotland. They're nailing it.
Yeah. Phil?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few comments floating around, and I think picking up on one Jayne said, absolutely, food needs to be an investment. There needs to be a change of mindset, and that starts with procurement. You know, we are the food specialists. We should be shaping the tenders. We need frameworks to be fluid. You know, just because they've been rigid for years doesn't mean they have to stay rigid for the next 10 years. You know, we need to shape it now. We've got some momentum. I shared with Andy earlier that Nutrition Hydration Week was a fantastic week, all right? And we celebrated it. But nutrition hydration is 365 days of the year. And that should be the same for British food. Yes, we can celebrate it this fortnight, but we should be using it day in, day out.
Okay, thank you. Linda, perhaps you could just give us a little bit of the perspective from ISS point of view. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be spending more than you have to, but you've obviously also making a commitment to British produce. So you're managing to make it work?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, one of the things, the philosophies of ISS is very much around it being every child's right, not privileged, to eat good food. And I think having that philosophy, and like I've said, that, you know, that commitment right from our leadership drives that through our business. And yeah, we are lucky. We do have a procurement team that is able to help us and negotiate and navigate around some of those more complex procurement issues. But I think, you know, just having that commitment in place, and I'm working with supply partners who are genuinely wanting to help us achieve what our philosophy is as a business is, you know, what makes it doable for us, really. And yes, cost is an issue. You know, we work in the public sector, and of course it's an issue. I'm not going to try and pretend it's not, but I think that, you know, it is something that people have got to realize is, you know, this, we're talking about feeding the next generation of children. You know, it's the next workforce, it's the next NHS, it's the next business. So, you know, why would we not invest in them, really?
Sure, thank you very much. Perhaps we can, in the sort of couple of minutes we've got left, just move quickly on to the issue of trade deals. Any concern from your point of view, Phil, that the food standards that, you know, the British growers and producers are held to could be undermined by some of the trade deals, if rumours are to be believed?
Yeah, it's a very nervous time. There's no doubt about it. You know, we all preach around this quality over quantity, and it's essential that our public sector are able to purchase quality. That's the bottom line. And the contracts that surround that, of course, will make the headlines. But the bottom line is we need our government to stand by the principles that we believe in. We set the bar very high within the UK, and we do not want that bar to be dropped. I'm not going to get on a political step because there's far too many people that are much better than me at doing it, aren't there, Mr. Jones? So let's let the public sector lead on that, and that's the right thing to do. You know that all of us as the public sector are fully behind you, and let's try and drive the argument in a positive way.
That's great. And perhaps just to wrap up now, Alexia, if I could turn to you. Obviously, British Food Fortnight starts on Saturday, as we said, but I assume it's not too late to get involved.
No, please, it's still lots of time to get involved. I mean, if people are nervous and thinking, oh God, I haven't been planning this for months, don't worry. My messages for you are, one, if you're out there and you're doing this already, shout about it during British Food Fortnight, because this is an opportunity for you to get brownie points and for you to have some fun with your customers, whether they're patients, the elderly, schools, students, prisoners, whoever. Shout about what you're doing. If you're not doing it, this is an opportunity, even at this stage, to perhaps to introduce something as simple like one new seasonal ingredient onto your menu, to have a quick conversation with some of your suppliers. So many of your suppliers will be gearing up for British Food Fortnight. I know they are. Brakes, for example, is such a close partner of us. I'm getting email requests, email communications all the time from suppliers around the country taking part, and see whether you can just introduce one new ingredient on your menu. If you want to have promotional material to support your menus and your activities, please email info@lovebritishfood.co.uk, and I will email you back with the password to give you access to all the promotional material on our website. If you want ideas, please go to the Public Procurement Hub. I've put the web link onto the chat zone, but also go to the British Food Fortnight pages where there's masses of information to inspire you. And do follow us on Twitter. We've got a very active Twitter account @LoveBritishFood. And most importantly, use the next 2 weeks to have fun. Because actually, when I get all the feedback from people who have taken part, they've had fun taking part. So enjoy it. And let's use it as a foundation for all the work and opportunities we want to capitalize on in the next 12 months, because there's a lot of work to be done, as we've talked about. We've talked about trade deals, food standards, things like that. This is our moment. But my message also to farmers, if there are any farmers looking at this, look, the public sector is has the potential to be British farming's biggest customer. And just look at what your potential customer is saying. What they're saying is they want to buy your produce. They care very much about, and they value the quality that you invest in. And so, this is such an opportunity for British farmers to start to form those new supply chains with the public sector. And let's start that conversation during this British Food Fortnight.
A very uplifting note on which to finish. So that, I'm afraid, has to be it for today. So my thanks once again to Alexia, Phil, Jayne and Linda, and to you too for joining us today. On the final webinar slides, you'll see the logos of the PSC 100 group sponsors whose generous support makes events like today's possible. We thank them, and we thank you for joining us today. And finally, you don't have to wait long until our next The Future of Your Service webinar, because we'll be back next Thursday, September 23rd, when the focus turns to schools. I will be joined by outgoing LACER Chair Stephen Forster and his successor Jackie Blake to discuss the key issues around school food and the school year ahead. We will also be getting an update on the LACER main event, which is just under 4 weeks away now, starting on October the 12th. Hope to see you then. Goodbye.